Hey everyone, welcome back to Stoic Saga, where we dive into the timeless teachings of Stoicism to help you lead a more peaceful and resilient life. Today we're tackling one of the most common and difficult emotions to manage, anger. Let's face it, anger is something we all experience, whether it's a heated argument, a frustrating situation at work, or just daily annoyances. But what if I told you that you don't have to let anger control you? Through the wisdom of Stoic philosophy, you can learn how to master your emotions, remain calm in the face of adversity, and transform anger into a source of strength and growth. In this episode, we'll explore 10 powerful Stoic lessons that will show you how to handle anger with patience, self-control, and emotional balance. By the end of this video, you'll have the tools to face any situation with grace, resilience, and peace of mind. Before we jump in, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share it with someone who might need these insights. Your support helps us grow and continue spreading the wisdom of Stoicism. Let's get started with the first lesson, Stoicism and Anger. 1. Stoicism and Anger. Anger, we've all felt it, whether it's from someone cutting you off in traffic, a rude remark at work, or just the frustration of things not going as planned. It's a powerful emotion that can take over quickly, often leaving us feeling out of control. But what if I told you that Stoicism holds the key to understanding and mastering anger, not by ignoring it, but by changing the way we react to it? Stoicism teaches us that anger doesn't arise from the events themselves, but from our interpretation of those events. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers and Roman emperors, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This means that the external world, whether it's people, circumstances, or random occurrences, is not what causes our anger. Rather, it's our judgment about these things that fuels the fire. Let's take a moment to break this down. Imagine you're in traffic and someone cuts you off. Your immediate reaction might be anger. You feel disrespected. You feel that the other driver is being reckless. But here's where Stoicism steps in. What if, instead of reacting on autopilot, you paused and considered the situation differently? Maybe the driver was in a hurry for an emergency, or maybe they simply didn't see you. The reality is, we don't know their situation. Stoicism encourages us to question our judgments. Is this situation really worth my anger? Am I letting a momentary frustration dictate my emotional state? One of the core lessons of Stoicism is that we cannot control other people's actions or external events, but we can always control how we respond. Anger often comes from the illusion that we can control everything around us. When we feel that control slipping away, we lash out. But Marcus Aurelius reminds us, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If our thoughts are constantly focused on frustration and irritation, we start to see the world through that lens. But if we train ourselves to think with calm and reason, we can change how we experience the world. Here's another example. Think about a situation at work where someone criticizes your performance unfairly. Your first reaction might be to defend yourself or to get angry. But ask yourself, what does anger achieve in this situation? Is it going to change the person's mind? Is it going to improve the outcome? Stoicism teaches us that anger clouds our judgment. When we're angry, we're not thinking clearly. We're reacting from a place of emotion rather than reason. Epictetus, another Stoic philosopher, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This is the essence of Stoic thought on anger. We can't stop the world from challenging us, but we can always control how we respond to those challenges. When we choose to respond with calm, thoughtfulness, and reason, we're exercising the true power that Stoicism offers, the power over ourselves. Now let's bring this back to the real world. Imagine a time when you let anger get the best of you. Maybe it was during an argument with a loved one or a stressful situation at work. In that moment, you felt justified in your anger. But afterwards, did that anger serve you? Did it make the situation better, or did it just leave you feeling drained? This is where Stoicism gives us a valuable insight. Anger is often a wasted emotion. It doesn't solve problems, and in most cases, it makes things worse. The Stoics believed that the best way to deal with anger is to recognize it for what it is, a temporary emotion, one that will pass if we allow it to. The key is not to suppress it, but to step back and observe it. When you feel that familiar heat rising, take a breath and remind yourself that you have the power to choose how you respond. Instead of letting the anger take over, you can choose to stay calm and approach the situation with clarity. Marcus Aurelius often practiced this method of stepping back and observing his emotions. In his meditations, he wrote, "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy." This simple idea reminds us that when we allow anger to dictate our actions, we're letting the situation control us. But when we choose not to act on that anger, we're reclaiming our power. Let's consider one more real-world scenario. Suppose you're working on a project and it falls apart due to someone else's mistake. Your first reaction might be frustration or anger. After all, you worked hard and now everything's gone wrong. But if you approach the situation with a Stoic mindset, you'd ask yourself, what can I control here? Can I change the fact that the mistake happened? Probably not. But I can control how I respond. I can choose to approach the person calmly, figure out a solution, and move forward without letting anger cloud my judgment. This is the Stoic way of handling anger, by focusing on what's within our control and letting go of what's outside of it. Anger becomes less of an overwhelming force and more of an opportunity to practice self-mastery. So, the next time you feel anger rising, remember this: the event itself is neutral. It's your judgment that gives it meaning. You have the power to change that judgment, and by doing so, you can change how you experience the situation. As the Stoics would say, master yourself, and you master the world. 2. Control your reactions. One of the fundamental teachings of Stoicism is the idea that while we cannot control what happens to us, we can always control how we react. This principle is not just about staying calm in the face of adversity. It's about recognizing that our reactions define our experience of life. Epictetus, a former slave who became one of the most influential Stoic philosophers, famously said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This quote encapsulates the essence of Stoic wisdom on emotional control, particularly when it comes to anger. Imagine this: you're at work and someone criticizes you unfairly. Your immediate reaction might be to feel defensive or angry. After all, no one likes to be criticized, especially when it's unjust. But what if, instead of reacting with anger, you took a moment to pause, reflect, and ask yourself, what do I really control in this situation? This pause is crucial because it gives you the space to choose how to respond rather than reacting impulsively. When we react without thinking, we're letting our emotions control us. Anger, frustration, sadness, these emotions are powerful, but they don't have to dictate our actions. Stoicism teaches us that true strength comes from self-control, from the ability to act in line with our values, regardless of how we feel in the moment. And this is especially true when it comes to anger. Let's break this down with a real-life example. Imagine you're in a heated argument with a close friend or family member. The conversation is escalating and emotions are running high. It's easy to let anger take over, to say things you don't mean in the heat of the moment. But Stoicism offers a different path. Instead of reacting immediately, take a deep breath and ask yourself, is this how I want to respond? Will this reaction help or hurt the situation? By doing so, you create a gap between the event, the argument, and your reaction. In that gap, you have the power to choose a response that aligns with your values, rather than letting anger dictate your actions. Epictetus taught that we are responsible for our own actions and reactions, but not for the actions of others. This means that no matter how unjust or frustrating someone else's behavior might be, you still have the power to decide how you will respond. It's tempting to blame others for our anger. They made me angry. But the truth is, no one can make you angry without your consent. Anger is a reaction that we choose, often without realizing it. Think about a time when you let anger control your response. Maybe it was during a disagreement at work or a misunderstanding with a loved one. In that moment, you felt justified in your anger. But what happened after? Did the anger help resolve the situation, or did it just escalate things further? More often than not, reacting in anger only makes the situation worse. This is why the Stoics emphasized the importance of controlling your reactions. By staying calm, you not only avoid unnecessary conflict, but you also maintain your own peace of mind. Let's consider another example. You're driving home after a long day, and someone cuts you off on the highway. Your first reaction might be to honk your horn, yell, or feel a surge of anger. But what if, instead of reacting impulsively, you took a moment to reflect? Does getting angry change the fact that the other driver cut you off? Does it improve your situation? Probably not. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what we can control, our own thoughts and actions, and to let go of what we cannot control, like the behavior of other drivers. By choosing not to react in anger, you're not only avoiding unnecessary stress, but you're also preserving your own mental and emotional well-being. The Stoics believed that anger is often a sign that we are trying to control the uncontrollable. When we get angry, it's usually because something has happened that we didn't expect or didn't want. But as Epictetus reminds us, we don't control external events. We only control how we interpret and respond to those events. This is why controlling your reactions is so important. When you stop trying to control everything around you and instead focus on controlling yourself, you'll find that anger has less power over you. One of the practical ways to control your reactions is through a Stoic technique called premeditatio malorum, which means premeditation of evils. This practice involves mentally preparing yourself for potential challenges and adversities before they happen. For example, before you head into a meeting where you know there might be conflict, or before you engage in a difficult conversation, take a few moments to imagine the possible outcomes. How might the other person react? What challenges could arise? By preparing yourself mentally, you'll be less likely to be caught off guard and react impulsively when things don't go as planned. Marcus Aurelius practiced this technique regularly. In his meditations he wrote, "Begin each day by telling yourself, 'Today I shall meet with interference, ingratitude, insolence, disloyalty, ill will, and selfishness, all of them due to the offender's ignorance of what is good or evil.'" By preparing himself for the inevitable challenges of the day, Marcus was able to maintain his composure and control his reactions, even in the face of difficult people and situations. Another key aspect of controlling your reactions is self-awareness. The Stoics believed that the more aware you are of your own emotional triggers, the better equipped you are to manage them. For example, if you know that you tend to get angry when someone interrupts you or when plans change unexpectedly, you can prepare yourself to respond differently in those situations. Instead of letting your emotions take over, you can remind yourself that you have the power to choose your reaction. Self-awareness also involves recognizing when you're starting to lose control of your emotions. This could be a physical sensation, like a tightening in your chest or a quickening of your breath, or it could be a mental shift, like feeling overwhelmed or defensive. When you notice these signs, that's your cue to pause, take a deep breath, and refocus on what you can control. The Stoics taught that awareness is the first step to mastery. By becoming more aware of your emotional responses, you can start to manage them more effectively. Controlling your reactions doesn't mean suppressing your emotions or pretending that you don't feel anything. It means acknowledging your emotions without letting them control you. Stoicism isn't about denying your humanity. It's about learning to manage it with wisdom and clarity. When you control your reactions, you're not ignoring your emotions, but rather, you're choosing how to express them in a way that aligns with your values and long-term goals. So, the next time you feel anger rising, remember this: you have the power to choose your reaction. Take a deep breath, step back, and ask yourself, what response will serve me best in this situation? By practicing this kind of control, you're not only avoiding unnecessary conflict, but you're also cultivating a sense of inner peace and resilience. 3. Mindfulness and Anger. In our fast-paced, constantly connected world, it's easy to get swept away by emotions like anger without even realizing it. One minute you're calm and collected, and the next, a single comment or event can send your emotions spiraling. This is where mindfulness becomes a powerful tool for managing anger, and it's a practice that aligns perfectly with Stoic philosophy. Mindfulness, at its core, is about being fully present in the moment and aware of what's happening inside you and around you. It's the practice of noticing your thoughts and emotions without getting caught up in them. When it comes to anger, mindfulness allows you to pause between the stimulus and the reaction, creating a space where you can choose how to respond rather than reacting impulsively. One of the most famous Stoic teachings comes from Marcus Aurelius, who wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This quote highlights the essence of mindfulness, the recognition that while you can't control what happens around you, you can always control how you interpret and react to those events. Let's break this down with a real-life example. Imagine you're in the middle of a busy workday, juggling multiple tasks, and suddenly a colleague makes a sharp comment that catches you off guard. Your first instinct might be to feel angry. How dare they say that when you're already under so much pressure? But if you're practicing mindfulness, you would take a moment to pause, notice the anger rising within you, and ask yourself, what's really going on here? Is the comment itself the problem, or is it the stress you were already feeling? By stepping back and observing your emotions without immediately reacting, you create space for a more thoughtful response. The Stoics believed that emotions are natural. Anger, frustration, sadness, they're all part of the human experience. But they also believed that we shouldn't be controlled by our emotions. Mindfulness allows us to acknowledge what we're feeling without letting those feelings dictate our actions. In the heat of the moment, it's easy to get lost in anger, but by practicing mindfulness, we can stay grounded and respond with clarity. One of the challenges with anger is that it often feels urgent. When you're angry, it can feel like you need to do something right away. Say something, take action, express how you feel. But the Stoics teach us that action without reflection is dangerous. Epictetus said, "We cannot choose our external circumstances, but we can always choose how we respond to them." Mindfulness helps us make that choice by giving us the time and space to reflect before we act. Let's consider another example. You're at home after a long day and something goes wrong. Maybe your internet goes out while you're working on an important project, or maybe your partner says something that irritates you. Without mindfulness, you might react immediately with frustration or anger, snapping at those around you, or venting your frustrations in a way that escalates the situation. But if you're practicing mindfulness, you would take a moment to pause, breathe, and recognize that your anger is a temporary emotion. By doing this, you're able to respond in a more measured way, without letting your emotions take control. The practice of mindfulness is deeply connected to the Stoic principle of focusing on what is within our control. When you're mindful, you're fully aware of your thoughts, emotions, and physical sensations, but you're also aware of the distinction between what you can and cannot control. For example, you can't control whether someone says something hurtful to you, but you can control how you react. You can't control whether your plans get disrupted, but you can control how you choose to deal with that disruption. Mindfulness also teaches us to observe our emotions without judgment. It's easy to feel guilty or ashamed when we get angry, especially if we've been working on staying calm and composed. But anger is a natural emotion, and it's okay to feel it. What matters is how you respond to it. Instead of judging yourself for feeling angry, mindfulness encourages you to simply notice the emotion. You might think, "I'm feeling anger right now. That's okay. I don't need to act on it immediately." This non-judgmental awareness creates a sense of emotional freedom, allowing you to experience your emotions without being controlled by them. Another powerful aspect of mindfulness is its ability to help us identify the root cause of our anger. Often, the anger we feel in the moment is just a surface-level emotion masking something deeper. For example, if you get angry because a friend cancelled plans at the last minute, the anger might be covering up feelings of disappointment or rejection. By practicing mindfulness, you can tune into those deeper emotions and address them more effectively. Instead of lashing out at your friend, you might realize that what you're really feeling is hurt, and that leads to a more constructive conversation. One of the simplest ways to incorporate mindfulness into your daily life is through mindful breathing. When you feel anger rising, take a moment to focus on your breath. Breathe in slowly through your nose, hold for a moment, and then exhale slowly through your mouth. By concentrating on your breath, you're bringing your attention back to the present moment and creating space between the stimulus and your reaction. This simple practice can be incredibly effective in diffusing anger before it takes control. Another useful mindfulness technique is body scanning. When you're angry, it's not just a mental experience, your body reacts too. You might notice your heart racing, your muscles tensing, or your jaw clenching. By practicing a body scan, you bring your awareness to these physical sensations and consciously relax them. For example, if you notice your shoulders are tight, take a moment to release that tension. By focusing on the physical sensations of anger, you can calm your body, which in turn helps calm your mind. Mindfulness also helps us to recognize the impermanence of emotions. Anger, like all emotions, is temporary. It might feel intense in the moment, but it will pass if we allow it to. The Stoics understood this well, which is why they emphasized the importance of staying calm and not getting carried away by fleeting emotions. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth." This quote reminds us that our emotions, like anger, are based on our interpretations of events, and those interpretations are not always accurate. By practicing mindfulness, we can observe our emotions without getting lost in them, knowing that they will pass with time. In conclusion, mindfulness is a powerful tool for managing anger. It allows us to pause, observe our emotions, and choose a response that aligns with our values. Instead of reacting impulsively, we can respond thoughtfully and with intention. By practicing mindfulness, we cultivate a sense of inner peace and resilience, allowing us to navigate life's challenges without being controlled by our emotions. 4. The impermanence of emotions. One of the core teachings of Stoicism is the understanding that all emotions, including anger, are temporary. This concept of impermanence is central to how Stoics approach emotional management. When we recognize that emotions come and go like waves, we become less likely to let them overwhelm us. Anger, in particular, is an emotion that can feel all-consuming in the moment, but it always passes if we give it time and space. Seneca, one of the great Stoic philosophers, wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." This quote is a reminder that difficult emotions like anger are not just challenges to be avoided, but opportunities to grow. When we face anger, we have a choice. We can let it control us, or we can use it as a moment to practice patience, resilience, and emotional mastery. Think about the last time you were truly angry. Maybe it was something that felt like a big deal in the moment, an argument with a friend, or a frustrating situation at work. But how do you feel about it now? Chances are the intensity of the anger has faded. The situation may not have changed, but your emotional response to it has. This is the nature of emotions. They are impermanent. They rise, peak, and eventually subside, much like waves in the ocean. Understanding this helps us take a step back in the heat of the moment, knowing that the storm of anger will pass if we allow it to. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, often reflected on the fleeting nature of emotions. He wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it." This quote highlights a profound truth. While the external world and our emotions are constantly changing, we have the power to shape our experience of life through our thoughts and attitudes. When we accept that anger is temporary, we can approach it with greater calm and wisdom, knowing that it will pass just as surely as it came. Let's break this down with a practical example. Imagine you're stuck in traffic on your way to an important meeting. Your first reaction might be frustration, maybe even anger. But if you remind yourself of the impermanence of emotions, you'll recognize that this anger, too, will pass. In a few hours, or even minutes, the situation will likely feel much less significant. By understanding that anger is temporary, you give yourself the freedom to choose a different response, perhaps one of acceptance or even patience. The Stoics believed that accepting the impermanence of emotions helps us maintain emotional balance. When we resist our emotions or try to suppress them, they often grow stronger. But when we acknowledge them for what they are, temporary states of mind, we can let them pass without letting them take control of our actions. This is particularly important with anger, which can lead us to say or do things we later regret if we act in the heat of the moment. Another key lesson from Stoicism is that emotions are not inherently good or bad. They are simply signals, indicators of how we are interpreting the world around us. Anger, for example, might be a sign that we feel wronged or that something is unfair. But the emotion itself is not the problem. It's how we choose to respond to it. By recognizing that anger is a temporary emotional state, we can respond to it with clarity and purpose, rather than letting it dictate our actions. Let's consider a more personal example. Imagine you've been working hard on a project, only to find out that someone else took credit for your work. Your first reaction might be anger, and understandably so. But instead of reacting immediately, take a moment to reflect on the impermanence of your emotions. Yes, you feel angry now, but will you still feel this way tomorrow? Next week? Probably not. By allowing yourself to sit with the emotion without acting on it, you give yourself the space to respond thoughtfully rather than impulsively. Maybe you have a calm conversation with the person who took credit, or maybe you focus on what you can control, your own actions and future efforts. Either way, by recognizing the impermanence of your anger, you avoid making decisions you might later regret. The Stoics also understood that accepting the impermanence of emotions allows us to live more fully in the present moment. When we're caught up in anger or frustration, it's easy to lose sight of what's really important. We become consumed by the emotion, and it colors our entire experience. But when we remember that emotions, including anger, are temporary, we can let go of the need to control or fix everything in the moment. Instead, we can focus on what truly matters: our values, our goals, and the things that bring us peace and fulfillment. This doesn't mean that we ignore or dismiss our emotions. Stoicism is not about suppressing how we feel. It's about acknowledging our emotions, understanding them, and then choosing how to respond. When we accept that anger is temporary, we create the space to respond with wisdom and calm. We can step back from the intensity of the emotion and approach the situation with a clearer mind. A useful practice in Stoicism is to remind yourself in moments of anger that this too shall pass. This simple phrase can be a powerful tool for diffusing anger before it takes over. When you feel the heat of anger rising, take a deep breath and remind yourself that this emotion, like all others, will pass. It's not permanent. It doesn't define you. It's simply a reaction to a momentary event, and it will fade with time. Another powerful practice is to reflect on past experiences of anger. Think about a time when you were really upset about something, only to realize later that it wasn't as big of a deal as it seemed at the time. How did your perspective change once the emotion passed? By reflecting on these past experiences, you can remind yourself that anger is fleeting, and that acting on it in the moment often leads to regret. This reflection helps you build emotional resilience, making it easier to handle future situations with calm and clarity. In conclusion, understanding the impermanence of emotions, particularly anger, is a key to emotional freedom. When we recognize that anger will pass, we are less likely to let it control us. We can observe it, acknowledge it, and then let it go, choosing instead to focus on what truly matters. This is the power of Stoicism. It gives us the tools to navigate life's emotional ups and downs with grace, patience, and resilience. 5. Understanding the root cause of emotions. One of the most powerful ways to master anger, and indeed any emotion, is to understand where it comes from. For the Stoics, self-awareness was key to emotional control. They believed that by understanding the root causes of our emotions, we could better manage them and prevent them from controlling us. This is especially true when it comes to anger, which is often a surface-level response masking deeper, more complex feelings. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, said, "People are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them." This means that it's not the event itself that causes us to feel angry, but the interpretation we attach to it. Understanding the root of our anger requires us to look deeper than the immediate situation. What beliefs or judgments are driving that anger? Why do we perceive the situation as something to be angry about? Let's take a real-world example. Imagine you're at work and your boss criticizes your performance in front of your colleagues. Instinctively, you might feel a surge of anger, maybe because you feel disrespected or humiliated. But if you step back and ask yourself, why am I feeling this way? You might uncover something deeper. Perhaps the anger is really about insecurity, feeling that your hard work isn't being recognized or that your competence is being questioned. By identifying the root cause of the anger, you can start to address the underlying issue rather than simply reacting to the immediate situation. The Stoics believed that self-awareness is the foundation of emotional mastery. They understood that our emotions often arise from unconscious beliefs and judgments, and that by bringing those beliefs into the light, we can change the way we react. Seneca wrote, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." This quote highlights the idea that our emotions, particularly anger, are often driven by thoughts and fears that are not entirely based in reality. By questioning those thoughts, we can start to diffuse the anger before it escalates. Consider another example. You're having a conversation with a friend and they make a remark that irritates you. Your first reaction might be to snap back or feel offended. But if you take a moment to reflect, you might realize that the comment touched on an insecurity or belief you've been carrying for a while. Maybe it wasn't the remark itself that caused the anger, but your interpretation of it. By understanding this deeper layer, you're able to respond more thoughtfully, addressing the real issue rather than reacting to the surface-level emotion. The Stoics believed that anger is often a sign that our expectations or desires are not being met. When reality doesn't match up with what we think should happen, we feel frustrated, upset, or angry. But by understanding this, we can start to manage our expectations and adjust our responses. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." This is a reminder that while we can't control external events, we can control how we interpret and respond to them. By understanding the root cause of our emotions, we gain control over how we experience them. Let's think about a situation where someone makes a mistake that affects you. Maybe a colleague forgets to send an important email, or a family member forgets something important to you. Your first instinct might be anger, but if you look deeper, you might realize that the anger stems from a belief that you've been let down, that someone didn't meet your expectations. By recognizing this, you can approach the situation with more understanding. Instead of reacting with anger, you might choose to address the issue calmly, focusing on finding a solution rather than dwelling on the emotion. Another important aspect of understanding the root cause of emotions is recognizing that anger often masks other feelings. Anger is a secondary emotion. It's usually triggered by underlying emotions like fear, hurt, or frustration. For example, if you get angry because a friend cancels plans at the last minute, the real feeling might be disappointment or a sense of rejection. By identifying the deeper emotion, you're better equipped to handle the situation in a way that resolves the issue rather than escalating it. The Stoics believed that by understanding these deeper layers, we could transform our emotional reactions. Instead of being controlled by anger, we can use it as a signal to explore what's really going on inside us. This process of self-inquiry allows us to move from reactive to reflective, from impulsive to intentional. It's about developing a deeper understanding of ourselves and using that knowledge to respond with wisdom and clarity. One practical way to explore the root cause of emotions is through journaling. The Stoics, particularly Marcus Aurelius, were strong advocates of writing down their thoughts and reflections. By journaling about your emotional experiences, what triggered them, how you felt, and why, you can start to uncover patterns in your thinking. This kind of self-reflection helps you become more aware of the beliefs and expectations that drive your emotions, giving you the power to change them. For example, you might notice that you tend to get angry in situations where you feel out of control or where someone questions your competence. By reflecting on these patterns, you can start to shift your perspective. Instead of letting anger take over, you might choose to approach these situations with curiosity or a desire to improve. The more you understand about what triggers your emotions, the more control you have over how you respond to them. Another practical tool is meditation, particularly Stoic meditation, where you reflect on your day and the emotions you experienced. By reviewing your actions and reactions, you can gain insight into the root causes of your feelings and make adjustments moving forward. This process of self-reflection is not about judgment, it's about learning and growth. The more aware you are of the root causes of your emotions, the more capable you become of mastering them. In conclusion, understanding the root cause of emotions, especially anger, is a powerful way to gain emotional control. By looking beneath the surface, questioning our beliefs, and exploring our deeper feelings, we can transform how we respond to challenging situations. This is the essence of Stoic emotional mastery, moving from reaction to reflection, from anger to understanding. When we understand the root of our emotions, we unlock the ability to choose our response with intention and wisdom. 6. Patience as a virtue. In Stoic philosophy, patience is considered one of the most valuable virtues. The ability to remain calm and composed in the face of delay, frustration, or adversity is a hallmark of emotional strength. For the Stoics, patience is not simply about waiting for things to get better. It's about cultivating the resilience to handle life's challenges without being overwhelmed by anger, impatience, or frustration. Seneca, one of the great Stoic thinkers, wrote, "How much better to endure an inconvenience than to remove it." This quote highlights the Stoic belief that learning to endure life's inevitable difficulties is far more powerful than trying to control or eliminate every source of discomfort. Patience is about accepting that we cannot control everything and choosing to respond with calm and grace, even when things don't go our way. Let's consider a common situation: waiting in a long line at the grocery store. It's a small inconvenience, but one that can quickly lead to frustration or impatience. You might feel your irritation rising as you stand there, checking your watch or phone, wishing the line would move faster. But what if, instead of letting that impatience take over, you saw this moment as an opportunity to practice patience? The Stoics would encourage you to reframe the situation, seeing it not as an annoyance, but as a chance to build your ability to stay calm in the face of delay. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "No man is disturbed by the things which happen, but by his opinion about those things." This Stoic insight is key to understanding patience. When we feel frustrated or impatient, it's often because we've made a judgment about the situation, that it's wrong, unfair, or not how things should be. But if we step back and question that judgment, we might find that our frustration is unnecessary. The situation itself, whether it's a long line, a traffic jam, or a delayed flight, is neutral. It's our opinion about it that creates the emotional response. By practicing patience, we learn to let go of those judgments and accept the situation for what it is. Patience is also deeply connected to the Stoic principle of focusing on what is within our control. In many cases, impatience arises because we're trying to control something that is outside of our power. For example, if you're stuck in traffic, there's nothing you can do to make the cars move faster. Getting angry or impatient won't change the situation, but you do have control over how you spend that time. You could use the moment to listen to an audiobook, practice deep breathing, or simply enjoy the quiet. By focusing on what you can control, you transform the experience from one of frustration to one of acceptance and calm. Think about a time when you faced a larger, more challenging situation that required patience. Perhaps waiting for the results of a job interview, dealing with a long-term illness, or navigating a difficult relationship. In these moments, patience becomes even more important because the stakes are higher and the waiting is longer. The Stoics believed that in these situations, patience is not just about enduring the wait. It's about developing resilience and cultivating the strength to keep moving forward, even when the outcome is uncertain. Epictetus, another key Stoic philosopher, taught that life is a series of tests and challenges, and that how we respond to those challenges defines who we are. He said, "Difficulties are things that show a person what they are." In this sense, patience is not just about surviving difficult times. It's about using those times as opportunities for growth. When we practice patience, we build inner strength, learning to navigate life's ups and downs without losing our emotional balance. Let's take a more personal example. Imagine you're working toward a significant goal, perhaps starting a business, training for a marathon, or pursuing a degree. Progress is slow, and there are setbacks along the way. It's easy to become discouraged, to feel like you're not getting anywhere, and to let impatience take over. But Stoicism teaches us that patience is essential for long-term success. The journey toward any meaningful goal is often filled with obstacles, and it's those who have the patience to keep going despite the challenges who ultimately succeed. The Stoics also believed that patience is closely linked to self-discipline. In order to remain patient, especially in difficult situations, we need to cultivate the ability to control our impulses and reactions. This means resisting the urge to act out of frustration, to give up when things get tough, or to lash out in anger when we don't get what we want. Patience requires emotional self-control, the ability to manage our emotions and stay focused on our long-term goals, rather than getting caught up in the moment. One practical way to develop patience is through the practice of delayed gratification. This involves deliberately postponing immediate pleasures or rewards in order to achieve a greater goal in the future. For example, if you're trying to save money for a big purchase, you might practice patience by resisting the urge to buy small, unnecessary items along the way. By delaying the gratification, you're building your capacity for patience, which will serve you in other areas of life as well. Another way to practice patience is to adopt a long-term perspective. Often, we become impatient because we're focused on the short-term discomfort or inconvenience of the moment. But if we step back and look at the bigger picture, we realize that this moment is just a small part of a much larger journey. The Stoics believed that by adopting a long-term view, we can stay patient in the face of temporary setbacks, knowing that they are part of the process of growth and progress. For example, let's say you're learning a new skill, like playing a musical instrument or learning a new language. At first, progress is slow, and it's easy to become frustrated. But if you remind yourself that mastery takes time and that every small step is bringing you closer to your goal, you can cultivate the patience needed to keep going. By focusing on the long-term goal rather than the immediate challenges, you're able to maintain your motivation and resilience. Seneca also reminds us that patience is not about passivity. It's not about sitting back and waiting for things to happen. Rather, it's about active endurance, the ability to keep moving forward, even when the path is difficult. Patience is about staying committed to your values and goals, even when progress is slow or the outcome is uncertain. It's about trusting the process and believing that your efforts will pay off in the end, even if the results take time to appear. In conclusion, patience is one of the most important virtues in Stoic philosophy. It allows us to navigate life's challenges with grace and resilience, without being overwhelmed by frustration or anger. By practicing patience, we cultivate emotional strength, self-discipline, and the ability to endure adversity without losing sight of our long-term goals. The next time you find yourself feeling impatient, remember the Stoic wisdom. What you cannot control, accept with patience. What you can control, approach with calm determination. 7. Forgiveness and emotional freedom. Forgiveness is often seen as an act of kindness toward others, but in Stoic philosophy, it's primarily viewed as a way to liberate yourself from emotional burdens. When you hold on to anger or resentment, you're the one carrying the weight of those negative emotions. Forgiveness, then, is not just a moral obligation, it's a tool for achieving emotional freedom. By letting go of grudges, you free your mind from the destructive power of anger and bitterness. Epictetus wisely said, "If someone succeeds in provoking you, realize that your mind is complicit in the provocation." This quote highlights an important Stoic belief, that we are responsible for our emotional reactions. When someone wrongs us, we can choose to hold on to that anger, or we can choose to let it go. Forgiveness is a conscious decision to release the anger and move forward, recognizing that the past cannot be changed, but our attitude toward it can. Let's think about a scenario where you've been deeply hurt by someone, perhaps a friend who betrayed your trust, or a family member who said something hurtful. It's natural to feel anger or disappointment, but holding on to those emotions over time only harms you. The Stoics would encourage you to reflect on whether that anger is serving any positive purpose. Is it helping you, or is it weighing you down? By choosing to forgive, you're not excusing the person's actions, but you're freeing yourself from the emotional grip of resentment. One of the greatest barriers to forgiveness is the belief that by forgiving, we're somehow condoning or accepting the wrong that was done to us. But as the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche once wrote, "He who cannot forgive breaks the bridge over which he himself must pass." Forgiveness is not about the other person, it's about your own well-being. When you forgive, you're choosing to prioritize your peace of mind over the desire to hold on to past hurts. In doing so, you restore your own emotional freedom and allow yourself to move forward without being shackled by anger. The Stoics believed that forgiveness requires empathy. This doesn't mean that you excuse bad behavior, but it does mean that you try to understand the other person's perspective. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Whenever you're about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question: what fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize?" This practice of self-reflection helps us recognize our own flaws, making it easier to forgive others. After all, we are all imperfect, and by acknowledging our own mistakes, we cultivate the humility needed to let go of anger. Consider a workplace scenario where a colleague takes credit for your idea. Your initial reaction might be anger or frustration. After all, it's unfair, and it feels like a personal attack. But if you approach the situation with a stoic mindset, you might ask yourself, is holding on to this anger going to change the outcome? More likely, it will only increase your stress and make the situation worse. Forgiveness doesn't mean you ignore the issue, but it allows you to approach it with calm and clarity. Perhaps you address the situation with your colleague or supervisor, but you do so without the emotional baggage of anger, focusing on resolving the problem rather than seeking retribution. Nelson Mandela, a leader who demonstrated profound emotional strength, once said, "Resentment is like drinking poison and then hoping it will kill your enemies." This quote echoes the Stoic belief that anger and resentment only harm the person who holds on to them. By letting go of these toxic emotions, you're not letting the other person off the hook. You're simply choosing not to let their actions dictate your emotional state. Forgiveness, in this sense, is an act of self-preservation. Forgiveness is also closely linked to the Stoic concept of acceptance. The Stoics taught that we should accept what we cannot change. When someone has wronged you, that event is in the past. It cannot be undone. But by accepting what has happened and choosing to forgive, you take control of how you move forward. Instead of letting the past define you, you focus on the present moment and what you can do to maintain your peace of mind. Let's consider a more personal example. A long-standing conflict with a family member. Perhaps there's been a misunderstanding or a series of events that have caused resentment to build over time. Every interaction is charged with old grievances, making it difficult to move forward. The Stoic approach would be to ask yourself, is holding on to this anger serving me? More often than not, the answer is no. By choosing to forgive, you're not erasing the past, but you're choosing to free yourself from its emotional weight. This allows you to rebuild the relationship, or at the very least, find peace within yourself, regardless of the other person's actions. The philosopher Lao Tzu also touched on this idea when he said, "Let go of what was, accept what is, have faith in what will be." This perspective aligns with Stoic principles by encouraging us to release our attachment to the past and focus on what is within our control, the present, and our response to it. Forgiveness, then, is not just an act of kindness. It's a way of reclaiming your mental and emotional freedom. Another critical element of forgiveness in Stoicism is the idea of pragmatism. The Stoics believed that emotions like anger and resentment are impractical. They cloud our judgment and prevent us from making rational decisions. Seneca wrote, "Anger, an acid that can do more harm to the vessel in which it is stored than to anything on which it is poured." Holding on to anger doesn't punish the person who wronged you, it only harms you. By letting go of that anger, you're clearing your mind and allowing yourself to focus on what really matters: your well-being, your goals, and your future. Forgiveness, in the Stoic sense, is not a sign of weakness, it's a sign of emotional strength. It takes courage to let go of anger, especially when you feel justified in holding on to it. But by choosing forgiveness, you're choosing to rise above the situation and reclaim control over your emotions. You're saying, "I won't let this hurt define me. I will move forward with peace and clarity." In conclusion, forgiveness is a powerful tool for emotional freedom. It allows us to release the burden of anger and resentment, freeing us to live more fully in the present. The Stoics understood that while we cannot control what others do, we can always control how we respond. By practicing forgiveness, we prioritize our peace of mind and cultivate a sense of inner strength and resilience. The next time you feel wronged, remember, forgiveness is not for the other person, it's for you. 8. Self-control and long-term goals. Self-control is often considered the foundation of a well-lived life, especially in Stoic philosophy. The Stoics understood that without self-control, we're easily swayed by our emotions, impulses, and external circumstances. True mastery, they believed, lies in being able to govern yourself, to align your actions with your long-term goals and values, rather than being led astray by fleeting desires or emotional reactions. Seneca, one of the most prominent Stoic philosophers, wrote, "No man is free who is not master of himself." This powerful statement speaks to the essence of self-control, the ability to resist immediate temptations or impulses in order to remain focused on what truly matters. Without self-control, we are slaves to our emotions, to external circumstances, and to the whims of the moment. But with self-control, we gain the freedom to shape our lives according to our principles and long-term aspirations. Think about a goal you've set for yourself. Maybe it's a professional goal like advancing in your career, or a personal goal like improving your health or relationships. Along the way, there are countless distractions, temptations, and challenges that can pull you off course. It's easy to lose focus and give in to short-term desires or frustrations, but self-control is what helps you stay on track, reminding you of your larger purpose and preventing you from being derailed by the ups and downs of everyday life. One of the key principles of Stoicism is the idea that we can't control external events, but we can always control how we respond to them. This is where self-control comes into play. Imagine you're working toward a big goal. Perhaps you're training for a marathon, saving for a house, or building your own business. There will inevitably be setbacks along the way. Maybe you miss a training session, face an unexpected expense, or experience a failure at work. In these moments, it's tempting to get discouraged, to lose sight of your goal, or to give up altogether. But Stoicism teaches us that the key to success lies in how we respond to these challenges. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, reflected on the importance of self-control in achieving long-term goals. He wrote, "Waste no more time arguing about what a good man should be. Be one." This quote is a reminder that self-control isn't just about resisting temptation in the moment. It's about consistently aligning your actions with your values and goals. Instead of getting caught up in distractions or temporary setbacks, the Stoic approach is to focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, and your attitude, and to keep moving forward with purpose. Let's break this down with a practical example. Imagine you've set a goal to improve your physical health by exercising regularly and eating well. At first, you're motivated and excited to make progress. But as time goes on, the temptations start to creep in. Maybe it's easier to skip a workout after a long day, or perhaps you find yourself indulging in unhealthy foods because it's convenient. Without self-control, it's easy to fall back into old habits and lose sight of your goal. But with self-control, you remind yourself of the bigger picture. Why did you set this goal in the first place? What will you gain by sticking to it? By focusing on your long-term goal, you're able to resist the short-term temptations that would otherwise derail your progress. The Stoics also believed that self-control is closely linked to emotional mastery. When we experience strong emotions like anger, frustration, or fear, it's easy to react impulsively. Whether that means saying something we don't mean, making a rash decision, or giving up on a goal. But self-control allows us to pause, reflect, and choose a response that aligns with our values, rather than being driven by emotion. Epictetus taught that self-control is the foundation of emotional freedom. He said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." In this sense, self-control is not about suppressing emotions, but about managing them in a way that serves our higher purpose. Consider a scenario where you're working toward a professional goal. Let's say you're aiming for a promotion at work. Along the way, there are challenges. Maybe a project doesn't go as planned, or a colleague criticizes your work. Your first reaction might be frustration or even anger, and it's easy to feel discouraged or to react emotionally. But Stoicism teaches us that self-control is about staying the course. Instead of letting your emotions dictate your actions, you remind yourself of your long-term goal. The setback is just a temporary obstacle, not a reason to give up. By practicing self-control, you maintain your focus and continue working toward your goal, despite the challenges. Self-control is also essential for achieving balance and moderation in life. The Stoics believed that excess, whether in emotions, actions, or desires, leads to imbalance and ultimately to suffering. By practicing self-control, we avoid the extremes and cultivate a sense of balance and harmony in our lives. This doesn't mean denying ourselves pleasure or suppressing our emotions. Rather, it's about finding the middle path, where we're in control of our actions rather than being controlled by them. Let's take another example. Imagine you're trying to save money for a long-term goal, like buying a house or starting a business. Along the way, there are plenty of opportunities to spend, whether it's on a vacation, a new gadget, or a night out with friends. It's tempting to give in to these short-term desires, but self-control is what keeps you focused on the bigger goal. You remind yourself that while these immediate pleasures might be enjoyable, they don't serve your long-term purpose. By practicing self-control, you're able to resist the temptation to spend impulsively and stay on track toward your larger goal. The Stoics also emphasized the importance of self-reflection in cultivating self-control. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, regularly reflected on his actions and decisions, asking himself whether he had lived in accordance with his values. This practice of daily reflection helps us stay mindful of our choices and hold ourselves accountable. By reflecting on where we succeeded in practicing self-control and where we might have faltered, we become more aware of our tendencies and better equipped to make wise decisions in the future. Another powerful tool for building self-control is visualization. Before entering a challenging situation, take a moment to visualize yourself handling it with calm and control. Imagine the temptations or obstacles you might face, and see yourself responding in a way that aligns with your long-term goals. This mental rehearsal can help you stay focused and disciplined when the real challenge arises, because you've already prepared yourself for it in your mind. Self-control, in the Stoic sense, is not about deprivation or rigid discipline. It's about freedom. By practicing self-control, we free ourselves from being slaves to our impulses, emotions, or external circumstances. We become the masters of our own lives, able to choose our actions based on what truly matters to us. As the philosopher Aristotle once said, "I count him braver who overcomes his desires than him who conquers his enemies, for the hardest victory is over self." This quote captures the essence of self-control. the courage and strength to govern ourselves in a way that aligns with our higher purpose. In conclusion, self-control is the key to achieving long-term goals and living a life of purpose and fulfillment. It allows us to stay focused on what truly matters, despite the distractions and challenges of everyday life. By practicing self-control, we cultivate emotional resilience, balance, and the freedom to shape our lives according to our values. The next time you face a temptation or challenge, remember the Stoic wisdom. Your greatest power lies in your ability to control yourself. 9. Reflection and improvement. One of the most powerful tools for personal growth, according to Stoic philosophy, is self-reflection. The Stoics believed that by regularly reflecting on our actions, thoughts, and decisions, we gain deeper insight into ourselves and uncover the areas where we can improve. This practice of reflection is not about self-criticism. It's about self-awareness. It's about understanding where we've done well, where we've fallen short, and how we can continue to grow in alignment with our values and goals. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, famously engaged in daily self-reflection. He would review his actions, thoughts, and behaviors, asking himself whether he had lived according to his Stoic principles. He wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive, to breathe, to think, to enjoy, to love." This simple reflection reminds us to appreciate life, but also to think carefully about how we live it. Marcus understood that reflection is key to improvement. By looking back on our day, we can learn from our experiences and make better choices moving forward. Let's break this down with a practical example. Imagine you've had a challenging day at work. Perhaps there was a disagreement with a colleague, or maybe you didn't handle a stressful situation as well as you'd hoped. The Stoic approach would be to reflect on these events at the end of the day, asking yourself, what could I have done differently? How can I improve next time? This kind of reflection isn't about dwelling on mistakes or feeling guilty. It's about recognizing opportunities for growth. It's about learning from the day's experiences so that you can approach similar situations with more wisdom and composure in the future. The philosopher Socrates famously said, "The unexamined life is not worth living." This quote aligns perfectly with the Stoic emphasis on self-reflection. Without regularly examining our thoughts, actions, and decisions, we risk drifting through life without truly understanding ourselves. Reflection allows us to become more intentional in how we live, helping us to align our actions with our values and long-term goals. Another powerful aspect of self-reflection is the ability to recognize patterns in our behavior. Often, we react to situations in the same way, over and over again, without realizing it. For example, you might notice that you tend to lose patience in certain types of situations, perhaps when you're feeling overwhelmed or when someone interrupts you. By reflecting on these patterns, you become more aware of your emotional triggers, and this awareness allows you to change how you respond. Instead of reacting impulsively, you can approach the situation with more self-control and thoughtfulness. Seneca, another great Stoic philosopher, wrote, "As long as you live, keep learning how to live." This quote is a reminder that self-reflection is an ongoing process. It's not something we do once and then forget about. It's a daily practice that helps us stay aligned with our values and goals. The Stoics believed that life is a journey of continuous improvement, and self-reflection is the tool that guides us on that journey. Let's consider another example. Imagine you're trying to improve your communication skills, whether at work or in your personal relationships. After a conversation, take a few moments to reflect on how it went. Did you listen carefully, or did you interrupt? Did you express your thoughts clearly, or were there moments of misunderstanding? By reflecting on these questions, you can identify areas for improvement and make a conscious effort to do better next time. This process of reflection and adjustment helps you become more effective in your interactions and more aligned with your values. In Stoicism, reflection is also about celebrating small victories. When you reflect on your day, don't just focus on what you could have done better. Take time to acknowledge where you succeeded. Maybe you remained calm in a stressful situation, or perhaps you made a decision that aligned with your long-term goals. These small victories are important because they reinforce positive behavior and motivate you to keep growing. Self-reflection is about balance, recognizing both your strengths and your areas for improvement. One of the practical tools the Stoics used for reflection was journaling. Marcus Aurelius's Meditations is essentially a collection of his personal reflections where he explored his thoughts, emotions, and challenges. By journaling about your experiences, you create a record of your progress, which can be incredibly valuable over time. Journaling allows you to see how far you've come and provides insights into patterns and triggers that you might not have noticed otherwise. For example, you might start to notice that you tend to get angry in situations where you feel out of control or when someone questions your competence. By reflecting on these patterns, you can begin to shift your perspective. Instead of letting anger take over, you can remind yourself that you have the power to choose your response. The more you reflect on your emotional responses, the better equipped you become to manage them in the future. Self-reflection also involves setting personal rules or guidelines for behavior. The Stoics believed in living according to rational principles, and reflection helps us assess whether we're living up to those principles. For example, you might set a personal rule to remain calm during disagreements, or to take a moment to pause before reacting to frustration. By reflecting on whether you've followed these rules, you hold yourself accountable and ensure that your actions align with your values. Let's consider a more challenging example. Imagine you've experienced a significant setback, like losing a job or going through a difficult breakup. It's natural to feel a range of emotions: anger, sadness, disappointment. But instead of letting those emotions take control, the Stoic approach would be to reflect on the situation. What did you learn from the experience? How can you grow from it? What strengths did you discover in yourself during this challenging time? By reflecting on these questions, you shift your focus from what went wrong to what you can gain from the experience. This kind of reflection not only helps you heal, but also makes you stronger and more resilient for future challenges. Another important aspect of reflection is recognizing that improvement is a gradual process. The Stoics understood that personal growth doesn't happen overnight. It's the result of consistent effort, self-awareness, and reflection. By regularly assessing where you are and where you want to be, you can set small, achievable goals that move you closer to your ideal self. This process of incremental improvement is key to living a fulfilling and purposeful life. Self-reflection is also about taking ownership of your growth. It's about recognizing that while you can't always control what happens to you, you can control how you respond and how you learn from it. The Stoics believed that true wisdom comes from constantly learning and improving, and reflection is the key to unlocking that wisdom. In conclusion, self-reflection is a powerful tool for growth and improvement. By regularly assessing your actions, thoughts, and emotions, you gain valuable insights into yourself and your journey toward becoming the best version of yourself. The Stoics believed that life is a constant process of learning, and reflection is what helps us stay on track. The next time you find yourself in a challenging situation, take a moment to reflect. What can I learn from this? How can I improve? By practicing reflection regularly, you'll find that you're able to navigate life's challenges with more clarity, wisdom, and purpose. 10. Acceptance and adaptation to circumstances. At the core of Stoic philosophy is the principle of acceptance, the understanding that many things in life are beyond our control, and that the key to inner peace lies in accepting these circumstances without resistance. The Stoics believed that by accepting what is outside of our control and focusing on what we can influence, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and open the door to personal growth and resilience. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, taught that we don't control events, only our reactions to them. He said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." This simple yet profound idea is at the heart of Stoic acceptance. No matter what challenges or setbacks life throws our way, we always have the power to choose how we respond. We may not be able to change external circumstances, but we can change our attitude toward them. Let's consider a common scenario. Imagine you've been working toward a major goal, perhaps a promotion at work, or completing a significant project. You've invested time and effort, and you're confident in your abilities. But then, something happens. A change in management, a decision beyond your control, and the opportunity slips away. Your first reaction might be anger, disappointment, or frustration. But the Stoics would remind you that these emotions arise from a desire to control the uncontrollable. The external event, the missed opportunity, was never fully within your power. What is within your power is your response. You can choose to dwell on the setback, or you can choose to accept the situation and adapt, focusing on your next steps rather than what could have been. Marcus Aurelius, in his Meditations, wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This quote highlights the Stoic belief that obstacles are not just challenges to overcome, they are opportunities for growth. When we face difficult circumstances, acceptance is not about passivity or resignation. It's about embracing the challenge and using it as a chance to strengthen our character and develop new skills. Every setback is an opportunity to practice resilience, patience, and adaptability. Let's break this down with a practical example. Imagine you're an athlete training for a competition and an injury sidelines you. It's easy to feel frustrated or defeated. After all, you've been working hard and now your progress has been interrupted. But the Stoic approach would be to accept the injury as something outside of your control and to focus on what you can do in the present moment. Maybe you can't train in the same way, but you can focus on rehabilitation, mental preparation, or even improving other areas of your life during the recovery period. By adapting to the new circumstances, you turn the obstacle into an opportunity for growth. The Stoics also believed that acceptance is closely tied to understanding the nature of impermanence. Everything in life, our emotions, our circumstances, our relationships, is constantly changing. When we resist change, we create unnecessary suffering. But when we accept that change is inevitable, we become more flexible and adaptable, able to navigate life's ups and downs with grace. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, that is poor." This quote reminds us that acceptance is about letting go of our attachment to outcomes and focusing instead on finding contentment in the present moment, regardless of external circumstances. Consider another example. You've been planning a vacation for months, and at the last minute, An unforeseen event forces you to cancel. It's natural to feel disappointed or upset, but the Stoics would encourage you to ask, is this event within my control? The answer, of course, is no. What is within your control is your reaction. You can choose to let the disappointment ruin your mood, or you can choose to accept the change of plans and adapt. Perhaps you take this opportunity to enjoy a staycation, explore local activities, or spend quality time with loved ones. By accepting the situation and finding a way to make the most of it, you free yourself from frustration and open the door to new experiences. The philosopher Lao Tzu also touched on this idea when he said, "Life is a series of natural and spontaneous changes. Don't resist them. That only creates sorrow. Let reality be reality. Let things flow naturally forward in whatever way they like." This perspective aligns with Stoic principles, reminding us that resistance to change is what causes suffering. When we accept life's natural flow, we become more resilient, more adaptable, and more at peace with whatever comes our way. Acceptance is not about giving up or avoiding action. It's about focusing on what is within our power and letting go of the rest. The Stoics believed that we should take action where we can, but we should do so with the understanding that the outcome is never fully within our control. This mindset helps us avoid the frustration and disappointment that often come from trying to control things that are inherently uncontrollable. Let's consider a more personal example. Imagine you've been in a long-term relationship and it comes to an unexpected end. The emotional pain is real, and it's natural to feel heartbroken or lost. But the Stoics would remind you that the end of the relationship is outside of your control. What is within your control is how you choose to move forward. Acceptance doesn't mean you ignore the pain or pretend it doesn't exist. It means acknowledging the reality of the situation, allowing yourself to grieve, and then focusing on what you can do to heal and grow from the experience. By accepting the end of the relationship, you free yourself from the cycle of what-ifs and regrets, and you open yourself up to new possibilities and a future filled with personal growth. The Stoics also emphasized that acceptance is a daily practice. Life is full of unexpected events, some good, some bad, and our ability to accept and adapt to these changes determines our level of peace and contentment. Epictetus encouraged his students to prepare themselves mentally for the challenges of the day ahead. He would advise them to reflect each morning on the possibility of encountering difficulties, whether it be rude people, obstacles at work, or personal setbacks, and to remind themselves that these events are beyond their control. By preparing their minds for the possibility of adversity, they were better equipped to handle whatever came their way with patience and composure. Another key aspect of acceptance is the Stoic concept of amor fati, which translates to love of fate. This idea encourages us not only to accept what happens, but to embrace it fully, seeing every event, whether positive or negative, as an integral part of our personal journey. When we practice amor fati, we stop wishing for things to be different and start seeing every experience as an opportunity for growth and self-improvement. It's about cultivating a mindset of radical acceptance, not just tolerating what happens, but loving it, seeing it as a necessary part of the path we're on. In conclusion, acceptance and adaptation are key principles in Stoic philosophy. By accepting what is beyond our control and focusing on what we can influence, we free ourselves from unnecessary suffering and cultivate resilience. Life will always present us with challenges, but the Stoics teach us that our greatest power lies in our ability to adapt, to turn obstacles into opportunities, and to approach every situation with calm, clarity, and purpose. The next time you face an unexpected event or setback, remember the Stoic wisdom. What is outside of your control is not worth your frustration. What is within your control is where your true power lies. We've covered a lot of ground in this episode, diving deep into Stoic philosophy and learning how to master one of the most challenging emotions, anger. The teachings of Marcus Aurelius, Seneca, Epictetus, and other philosophers remind us that while we may not be able to control the events around us, we always have the power to control how we react to them. By practicing patience, self-control, reflection, and acceptance, we can turn anger into a tool for personal growth and emotional freedom. Remember, the key to managing anger lies in understanding that it's not the external situation that disturbs us, but our judgment of it. With Stoicism, we gain the strength to shift our perspective, letting go of what we can't control and focusing on the wisdom we can apply in each moment. As you move forward, take these lessons to heart. The next time you feel anger rising, pause, reflect, and choose how you want to respond. In doing so, you'll not only conquer anger, but also achieve a deeper sense of inner peace and resilience. Thank you for watching. If you found these Stoic teachings helpful, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video with someone who might benefit from it. Let's continue building a community focused on growth, resilience, and the Stoic way of life.